Pecha Kucha 213, Inktober 2020, week 4. So that's it, month's over. Hard work's over for another year. We'll try and keep this going, but this was the easy bit. November, now that I don't have a job and I really need to ramp the art up even more, that's going to be the hard part. So the first word of the week was buddy, and I was like, well, who are the best buddies? Superman and Batman, right? Yeah, it's a meme, but I thought, two buddies, that could be anything. That could be SpongeBob and Squidward. I already did Ren and Stimpy. Just it's too much, so I went with what I went with, because at the end of the day, it's more about the joke, where they're both like, I don't like you, but we're still friends. Super Friends, if you know anything about the 1970s, but the less said about that, the better. Best picture of Superman I've ever drawn, third best picture of Batman I've ever drawn. Not that that's saying much. The next word of the week was hide. I was like, well, obviously that means ninjas, but ninjas means drawing stuff in perspective, backgrounds, and, the ninja doing sneaky stuff. In the end, I couldn't reconcile my lack of skill with the beautiful images in my head, so I was like, well, what else can I do? And I'm like, do you know who hides in cardboard boxes? Solid Snake. That's awesome. But then I'm like, yeah, but that still suffers from me having to draw a place where he's hiding, but he's there, which means I've got to figure out a lot of stuff, like, he needs to be interacting with someone else, and it's like, all of this is too much work. And what I really thought to do in the first place was stick the Grouch from Sesame Street in his trash can, say, hey, leave me alone, get out of here. And that was nagging at the back of my mind the whole time, and in the end, I just went with what I knew I should have in the first place. Sometimes you've got to go around the houses to get back to where you're supposed to be. I don't know if you see me graffiti walls in my work an awful lot. That's probably the highlight of this. There's just a calligraphy pen in Manga Studio that makes this so bloody easy. I have no idea how well Sesame Street tracks in 2020. I must have watched it as a kid, but whatever. Next word was music. What I instantly thought of was Perfect Cell playing the saxophone, because of course. So I just grabbed an image of someone playing the saxophone, more because I can't draw a saxophone. I just need direct reference. And then I'm like, let me use it for the skeleton, because he's got to be holding that saxophone. It'll take me a whole week to figure out how to have a guy hold that. And then I'm just going to try and, put Perfect Cell on top of that, looking at some Akira Toriyama art. His head is not a real head. It's a manga head, so it took me a long time to figure out how to make that look not just wrong when I used a reference of a real man with a real mouth playing the saxophone. I think this facsimile is good enough. Is this a meme? Did I invent a meme? I don't know. I don't think I can invent any meme with saxophones. What is he playing? Careless Whisper. Next question. The next word was float. I don't know how I ended up with Dr. Doom levitating a frog, but it wasn't so far away from my original idea, because I was just going to draw M. Bison floating, and then I was like, nah, I know the next word of the day is shoes, and I love his boots. So I ended up drawing Dr. Doom. This is one of the better pictures I've ever drawn. I'm trying to ape like the kind of 70s Fantastic Four, where it's over the top and it's silly and it's, everybody's, is you take it for what it is, and it's great. I think I kind of shaded Dr. Doom like inversely. His metal arms are darker than his green cape and cowl and clothes, but that would be very easily fixed if it was coloured, right? I don't know if the action lines were a good idea, and I'm not sure if I've implemented them in an appropriate way. I don't use action lines very often. Very happy with the frog, though. But moving on, the next word was shoes. So I was like, how do I best demonstrate M. Bison's lovely boots? I like those shin guards of his very much. And eventually I was like, well, let's just have him, do that special move where he stomps people in the face. Let's have some fun with that. And another opportunity to go crazy with action lines. Manga Studio makes these things very easy, but The drawback is my lack of experience, and honestly, I can't remember how to use them very, very well. It's a bit of a logistical nightmare editing them as well, which is why some are in red. There are multiple layers, and I'm just trying to delete them so that they're behind the characters, not in front. But half of M. Bison is made up of action lines, so it looks like he's moving at a very high velocity. I'm not sure if it's quite what I wanted, but it's not the worst picture of M. Bison I've drawn. To this day, I still don't know how to draw him properly. It's great. And then the next word was ominous, and I instantly thought, well, what's the most ominous thing to me? Next Monday. Why? Because I've got to be unemployed and I've got to square that with the Department for Work and Pensions in the middle of a COVID epidemic. I don't know what that means. And I'm like, well, who's afraid of Mondays? Garfield is. And actually, in my final upload, I cross-hatched Garfield, which I think was probably a mistake. But I don't know. My Garfield art's not the strongest. I had direct reference. I did what I could, but I'll just leave it to John Davis. Final word of the month was crawled, but I was like, nah, screw that. It's the final day of the month. I just drew Skeletor because it was Halloween and memes. And I just thought he'd be cool if he was like, hey, you know, I ingested a lot of Skeletor memes just off of Google. I think I have a terminal case of it now. But drawing those hands was too hard, so I gave him Oogie Boogie hands and then just had him say something silly. And I know, you know, he doesn't go, yeah, that's Papyrus from Undertale, but so what? They're all related. I hope that's not skeletonist. I guess we're all related. We all have skeletons under the skin, right? But that brings us to the end of Inktober 2020. I stuck to one style. It wasn't always, well, more or less, it wasn't always the best approach. I did break the rules a few times. No colour was used, I think, at all. It's far more cohesive and coherent than it was last year, but last year I had a full-time job, and on some of those days in Inktober I literally had 20 minutes during my lunch break to do something, anything, and that's what got done. This is a good signifier that if I put my mind to it, it can get done and I can end up with some good stuff, and I got a little bit of traction on social media with it, and I think really that just proves keep putting stuff out and slowly you can turn it into something. I'm going to spend a little bit of today looking at what the analytics say on Tumblr because they've changed the way it works, so I probably won't be able to actually extrapolate any information. But that's enough gobbing. Right, so that brings us to the end of Pecha Kucha 213, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens next week.